Hi everyone, it's Steve Barrett here, another edition of Coffee Break, or maybe I should call it Cafecito Break, because we've got Armando Azarloza with us, who's the CEO of Axis, which is a great agency. I've known Armando for many years. Welcome to the show, Armando. How are you doing?
Good, Steve. Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning.
Yeah, so we've known each other since I came to the States, actually. I remember doing a roundtable about the sort of Hispanic marketing area back at Hispanicize. I think it was in Dallas, wasn't it? Way back 2010 or 11. The market's evolved a lot since then, and you made a decision last year that you were part of Weber Shandwick, part of IPG, and you made a decision to come out of that structure and become independent again, although I think IPG still has a sort of minority share. So tell us what you're seeing in the market and what drove you to kind of take that decision to come out and go independent again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was it was an interesting period of time. I mean, we made the decision to do that just right during the time where we actually where COVID broke and everybody was sent home. So it was kind of a daunting environment to do this, but we thought it was the right thing to do for many reasons. And I think one of the key reasons kind of driving the decision is, we saw the constant evolution of the multicultural markets across the United States. The census has obviously shown that to be the case, but we felt it was more important for us to be independent so we can actually kind of invest into the market, do some things that perhaps we were kind of limited to doing because of our IPG relationship. We wanted to be able to, to work across different sectors and different categories in a way not encumbered by any kind of, conflicts or any profitability regulation or strategies. And so it was an opportunity for us to kind of invest in the marketplace. So, what I did was essentially what I'm asking companies to do, which is invest in the market, take a deeper dive into the market, kind of look at it, understand the evolution that is taking place, and really try to, prepare for it and allow your own marketing to evolve as the market evolves.
Yeah, it must have been I'm sure that decision was in the pipeline for a long time. So I guess it was kind of a coincidence that it happened during COVID. But how much more challenging did that make it, if at all?
Well, I mean, I think obviously we were going into a challenging environment regardless of COVID. I mean, when you separate yourself from a parent company, there are obviously operational challenges and business challenges and whatnot. I thought we had a pretty good hold on how to deal with those things, and in fact, I think we ultimately proved that we did. Obviously, the COVID environment made it even more challenging, both professionally, but even personally. People were going through the fears associated with COVID. Employees of ours, families, were affected by it. So we had to be able to figure out how to manage those personal issues as well. So we were doubly challenged with the separation plus the current environment. Luckily, I think we kind of got through it very easily for the most part. Our clients, I think, are clients that are deeply rooted into the multicultural market. So whether there was COVID or not or non-COVID, they were going to continue to invest in the marketplace, and we saw that. We saw a small kind of tapering off of certain budgets at the early beginning stages, but all those things came back as the country roared back and the economy roared back, and those investments, I think, in the last 18 months or so have actually grown, and we've seen our own business grow in the last year or so. But more importantly, I think that the investment and the recognition of the marketplace has actually grown as well in the minds of our clients.
Now, when you're part of a holding company, I guess there's a segment of your time and the company's time spent pretty much servicing that relationship, if you like. Mm-hmm. You're still part of IPG with a minority investment. Sure. Tell us a bit about how much less time you need to devote to that, and how that's helped you maybe devote that more to client work and getting new business.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Yeah, I mean, I think as you can imagine, being part of IPG and part of being the executive committee at CMG, the mini holding company, we spent a lot of time dealing with some of the operational issues and some of the business issues of CMG, and we contributed to that process. And so it was time consuming, and you could imagine from a financial perspective, there's a lot of your time is consumed around business strategies and profitability and scaling up and scaling down depending on the situation. So for sure, there's been more time now put back in our laps, and we've been able to use that to further develop not only not only the business side of the agency, but also the operational side. I mean, I thought, the nice thing about being part of IPG for so many years is that, we had built-in systems in place that I think allowed us to kind of carry us forward after the divestiture. We didn't have those issues that a lot of agencies have when they're first starting out to try to build the operational infrastructure. We had that infrastructure already built. We were really, my partner and I, Carmen Lawrence, were really well trained by IPG after 20 some years, and so we put those things to work. Now, the nice thing is, of course, now as owners, we were able to kind of refine a little bit some of the operational pieces, add some additional things, create some additional investments in certain areas that I think make us much more competitive. So we've introduced recently a whole new brand identity, which I think gets us a little bit closer to who we are really, and where we started in Hispanic marketing. But we've also been able to really kind of double down on some of the marketing pieces associated, the marketing positioning, if you will, associated with our agency. We first started out mostly doing PR and communications, and over the last couple of years, and certainly in the last 18 months, we've really doubled down on the marketing side. And I think today we're much more of a marketing agency than simply a PR agency. We handle all those types of different things, but marketing has become a big engine for us.
And tell us about how you've seen the multicultural marketing market sort of evolve. I think it was about 15, 16 years ago since you first set up the practice within Weber, as I recall. And the market's changed a lot. The agencies have done different strategies. Some have stayed resolutely independent. Some have gone into holding companies. Others have gone into smaller creative companies. Some have gone in and come out like yourselves. How do you see the market now, and how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's smart to kind of take a step back and look at the market and see how it's evolved. When I first got into this business, when you and I first met 20 some years ago, a lot of it was simply translation of existing creative or existing PR strategy. Then we kind of evolved into kind of adapting the strategy to fit the marketplace. So it called for some level of kind of adaptation, if you will, of the overall strategy, but still, it was still a general market strategy. I always say to everybody, you could put an ad in Spanish that was created by a general market agency, but it's still a general market ad. And that's where we were up until like the last 5 years, last 4 years. I think in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen it take a huge step forward. And that step really requires working alongside our agency partners to come up with something that works for the Hispanic market across some sort of universal insight that speaks to all the markets, but is holistically engineered to fit the Hispanic sector. And so we're now sitting with clients and agency partners and jointly creating insights for campaigns, trying to land on some sort of fundamental truth that speaks to the marketplace, and then going off and doing that, creating that idea in its own right. So I think the days of translation and even adaptation are long gone. Today, there's much more of original content being developed for these multicultural markets.
Yeah, those rather clunky ads that were literally just sort of overdubbed into Spanish. Hopefully those days are gone, and it's a much more sophisticated world we're living in. Tell us a bit about the, Hispanic market, even the terminology. People don't, is it Hispanic? Is it Latin? Is it Latinx? And then there's the whole question about, can you look at the Hispanic market in one lump, or is it, it's very different. It's 20 different countries of origin, different parts of the country, different regionalities, but then maybe certain things are across all Hispanic populations, maybe family, faith, etc. Talk to us a little bit about that, and maybe some of the misperceptions of the market.
Yeah, well, I think one of the fundamental truths that we have to all accept is that America has become much more racially and ethnically diverse than ever before. The 2020 census, I think, provides pretty clear evidence that white Americans are on the decline in terms of population, and multicultural segments are on the rise. Hispanic population has grown almost 25% over the last 10 years. So there was 50 million Americans that self-identify as being other than white. So these demographic shifts, I think, have real world implications for companies. And I think as the market evolves, then your own marketing has to evolve to be able to fit into that reality. So both across public and private sectors, the call for diversity and cultural awareness it used to be a nice to have. I mean, when you and I first met, it was a nice thing to have, and you translate something into Spanish, and it hopefully, resonates with the audience that you're speaking to. Today, it's really a critical requirement. It's no longer just something that that you just check off the box. It has to be part of your overall business strategy, and we're seeing that with my clients at least. A much deeper involvement, much deeper investment. They want clearer insights into the marketplace to figure out exactly how they position themselves. And you're right, the Hispanic market is not necessarily a simple market. I mean, it's not just translating something into Spanish. The reality is that the market is not homogeneous. It's really a multitude of markets within the overall Hispanic, identity. So if you're talking to somebody, a Mexican American in Texas, you're talking to a Central American in California, you're talking to a Cuban American in Miami, the strategies that you use to try to, win that audience or win with that audience have to be different. We look at language perhaps in a little bit of a different way than others. We don't see language as a strategy, perhaps. We see it as more of a tactic. We're much more language agnostic than a lot of agencies. We'll do stuff in English if it calls for that, and we'll do stuff in Spanish when it calls for that. If you're talking to a new immigrant community or an older community, you for sure want to do stuff in Spanish. But if you're talking to a more vibrant, younger community, that part of the economy that is driving much of the purchasing, there you probably want to do it in English. I think you and I talked about this years ago. I used to have Nintendo as a client, and we were talking with that campaign was a bilingual campaign. When we're talking to the gamers, the kids that are playing the games, we're talking to them in English with all the proper cultural context. That has to be part of the equation for sure. But then when you're talking to the parents that are buying these games for the kids, there you're talking to them in Spanish. So it's very easy for us to move from one language to the other if you truly understand the marketplace and you understand the differences that exist in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's one that people don't always understand. There's loads of other misperceptions. I remember we did a roundtable, and somebody sort of brought up a Che Guevara T-shirt, and how that was somehow, redolent with Cuban Americans, whereas of course most Cuban Americans are in America because they were fleeing that regime. Right. So there's sort of certain things that maybe people don't understand, that an agency such as yours and others, that's just part of your psyche and part of your heritage, and that naturally. Right.
So, right. Yeah. I mean, we work with our clients really closely to try to figure out, how to manage from the fluency aspect of culture. So there is a certain amount of fluency. I mean, to your point about Che Guevara, you also don't want to necessarily, if you focus on, let's say, music, you're not going to put probably a tropical band in LA, because it may not work, or in Texas. If you're talking sports, you may not want to talk soccer in South Florida. You want to talk baseball. So that kind of nuance is really critical in how we come up with the right proper strategy. And it's working along with our clients and trying to help them kind of navigate that cultural spectrum that if you will, is evolving. So it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy for people like us that have been involved in for 20 years, for a company that is, interested in the marketplace as part of their customer base, but is looking to really try to figure out how to hone in there. There's a lot of dimension that you have to kind of look through, and they look to agencies like ours to be able to kind of help figure out what's that proper intersection between brand building and diversity marketing.
Yeah, just to finish, what are you seeing at clients? Multicultural marketing used to be a sort of a little offshoot, maybe in a corner room somewhere. Now it's more mainstream. How would you like to see clients structured, and what are you seeing, in terms of the way they structure their marketing departments now?
Well, I mean, I think what I like to see is what I'm seeing with a couple of our clients right now. Kaiser Permanente is a very good example of this. Aldi grocery stores is another good example of this. We're planning alongside their general market agencies, and we're planning alongside their corporate folks. The strategy is developed jointly. It's not developed as an afterthought. It's not, they don't bake it and we have to figure out how to put the sprinkles on. Those days are long gone. And it's welcoming to people like us that have worked so hard in this marketplace to be able to sit alongside somebody on the general market side and say, okay, how do we craft something that is culturally relevant, culturally aware of the situation in front of us, and create the proper strategies and insight to be able to do that. And we've seen that happen over the years. I mean, probably one of my proudest campaigns has been the U.S. Army. I was lucky enough to be part of the team that developed the Army Strong brand. And we were able to take that Army Strong brand into the multicultural communities and introduce the idea of service and mission into the community. That was a campaign that was planned jointly with all the agencies, taking part in the process. And I think that's where we're headed today. We're not talking about silos. We're not talking about sprinkling something on the very top of a campaign any longer. You're talking about a full service approach to be able to truly understand what are the business needs of a company and how do you execute against those opportunities in the multicultural markets. And it's a new day, it's refreshing. And I think it's something that I think at the end of the day is going to open up a lot of doors and really help many companies truly sell into the market.
Yeah, it's good to hear, Armando. Really good to hear that. And thanks for joining us to tell us more about it and the way the market's going. And good luck in the rest of the year in 2022.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the chance to talk and look forward to doing it again soon.